Hey guys, welcome back to another impressions video. This time around for another PlayStation 3 game here, Spec Ops: The Line. I'm just trying to tackle the big backlog that I have on the PlayStation 3, and yes, I do enjoy playing the system, even though now we're deep in the new generation of PS4, Xbox One, and stuff. I still play my PS3, and this is one game that I've been meaning to play for some time, solely based on the very good impressions that some people that I follow here on YouTube played this game and they really enjoyed it. So it was on my radar, it was on my top of my queue or backlog list, and I finally got around to playing it. Very good choice in the sense that it's a short game, it has a pretty good story, but I have to say it did not live up to the expectations that I set to this game based on the impressions of other people here on YouTube, and also the impressions of people from, for example, from NeoGAF, which is a forum that I follow, and people there love this game, the story and the characters and whatnot, and I did too. It's a good game. I had a good time with it. It's just it didn't have that major, I guess, impression or positive impression that a lot of people got from the game. So the good thing about Spec Ops: The Line is that it's a short game, like I mentioned. It packs some decent graphics for being a PlayStation 3 game, but the meat and potatoes obviously lies within the story of the game. So speaking of the story, not gonna spoil too much, but the game is set in Dubai, which has been basically ransacked by this huge like out of proportion sandstorm. So basically the city is laying all destroyed, and parts of the city are under sand and stuff like that. So there's a lot of chaos, and you are sent as part of a Delta Ops group to find survivors and try to get some recon of the area and the events that happened, and get the survivors and then rescue them. But at the same time, you found out that this person that was in charge of the military there in Dubai, I believe his name is Conrad, had some other things and in mind, and that's when the story really unfolds, and you kind of have to, I guess, go against your own people in a way. You fight locals, but at the same time, you have to set up this, I guess, opposition force from this squadron called the 33rd. So the game relies a lot. Obviously, a lot of things happen later in the game as far as the story-wise, but I'm not going to spoil them. But it's a very interesting, I guess, concept in the sense that it puts you in a weird position where you have to, fight against your own people, American troops, in the game, which is a little bit weird, but there are reasons why you do this, and the game does a very good job of dealing with, I guess, war mature themes. This is not just your typical dude bro shooter like Gears of War, where you take cover, you shoot people, and then you just muscle your way through. The game does touches on very delicate things, such as the emotions that a soldier has to go through, the traumatic events that war puts you in, and that soldiers have to experience and endure. So I think the game does a really good job of touching those subjects, which are not brought up that much. We have plenty of war shooters out there, the Call of Duties, the Battlefields, and they all show you the exact same thing, which is just your modern warfare. You shoot people, you kill people, and that's it. But this game, I think, touches on a more deep basis on what the experience is actually like for people that are out there fighting, and the struggles that you have to go through, physically, emotionally, and stuff like that. So I think this game in that regard is a very mature, not because of the violence, not because it's a shooter, but essentially because of the themes that the game touches. And that's, I think, the most unique and positive thing about this game. The horrors of war presented to you in a certain uncomfortable way, and sometimes because the game pits you. Sometimes in the later chapters you have to make decisions, and based on those decisions, things can change, and the game has different endings as well. So sometimes you have to make some moral decisions that are a little bit uncomfortable, or you have to really think what would you do if you're in that situation. But yeah, overall the game, the story is definitely the most positive thing of the game. Graphically, it's a last generation game, so I try to put, I'm so used to now to playing PS4 games, Xbox One games, they all look great. but I was trying to put myself back into when this game was released, and I do think that this game, it looks above average, but it's nothing special. I think the textures are pretty basic. The environments themselves are pretty basic. You know, there are buildings, but there's sand everywhere. So the developer caught a break there, making things simple. You know, things like textures and things like that. So in that regard, the game is not very detailed, except for the character models. Whenever there's a cinematic sequence, you can tell the character models have a very nice 3D effect, a lot of detail in their faces, expressions, and just the overall animations of the characters. So they did a good job with the character models, not so much with the environments. But again, you know, it's a PlayStation 3 game. I was not expecting a whole lot, but I do have to say that this is a you know, medium budget type of game, nothing to be wowed or impressed at, and that follows in the performance category, which, you know, this game has plenty of frame rate drops, a lot of clipping and stuttering going on. Sometimes the textures take a while to load, so you would see a cinematic sequence with like really low resolution textures they keep popping up and improving the texture. So in that regard, the game, you know, performance wise, the game is far from being the best, but hopefully that doesn't deter you guys from trying this out if you're interested. Because the gameplay, you know, following the, you know, the graphics, the gameplay is actually really good. This is one of the most I guess solid third-person shooters that I played in terms of the aiming and things like that. Better than the Uncharted games, which sometimes they feel a little bit sloppy. The aiming, for some reason, Naughty Dog, which is a fantastic developer, they can create amazing graphics on their games, but for a game like this, for some reason, you know, for the Uncharted games, you know, the aiming sometimes feels a little bit off, which is you know, puts you off from the immersion of the game. But this game, the aiming is very precise. You know, you get different weapons, sniper rifles, automatic rifles. And you know, they all feel very precise with the DualShock. I did not have to mess with the sensitivity of the of the sticks at all. So in that regard, the game has a very solid gameplay. And it's your typical, you know, third-person shooter, Gears of War / Uncharted / Tomb Raider type of game where, you know, you run, you take cover, you can jump over obstacles, and then, you know, you take cover, you can peek out, shoot at the enemy, get behind cover again. So a very linear experience, very generic in some ways. So don't expect to see anything spectacular or any you know, new features that will blow your mind here. This is a very straightforward third-person shooter that controls very well, but everything else about it is very generic, very straightforward, very straight line. You know, third-person shooter, very linear. Basically, there's no open worldness about this game. It's extremely linear. You go from point A to point B. You watch a cinematic sequence. You go to the next chapter, and so forth. So, and then we have the sound, which is, you know, the voice acting is pretty good. You know, the soundtrack is pretty good. There are some licensed tracks within the game, but for the most part, nothing spectacular. So overall, my impressions on this game, I don't want to make this too long. My overall impression is that Spec Ops: The Line is a very solid shooter game. I wouldn't recommend you guys going out there and looking this to buy this. Don't go out of your way. If the story sounds interesting to you, then yeah, go ahead and buy the game. I think it's pretty cheap. And I don't personally foresee this game getting a HD remaster version because I don't think the game was very successful to begin with as far as sales. So if you're somewhat interested, then I say yeah, go to your GameStop or whatever and try and get a hold of a copy of the game. I don't think this game is expensive at all. Under $15, I think you can get this game. But yeah, I've heard many good things about this game. I wanted to try it. I'm glad I did. You know, the game, like I said, it's a little bit linear. There's not a whole lot of variation about the enemies, and I do want to point out one negative thing, another thing that I didn't like about the game is that the jumps and difficulty in this game are a little bit ridiculous. At first, you know, you shoot enemies, you kill them easy, no problem, and then towards the end of the game, you get all these enemies that some of them are the exact same soldiers that you face in the beginning of the game, but for some magical reason, they can withstand more damage, and for some magical reason, they have perfect aiming towards the end of the game. So it takes a little bit out of the immersion of the game because you have these perfect soldiers that just so happen to confront you towards the final chapters of the game. And towards the beginning chapter of the game, you have all these dumb soldiers that have a horrible aiming, and they die with like one shot in their knees. So the difficulty was not done in an elegant way, which is unfortunate. Like I said, it breaks a little bit of the immersion of the game, but overall, this game is a solid game. I was trying to look up the impressions. I think Steven and Laggy Gamer talked about this game a long time ago, and Doomwaves did the same thing. I went back to their channels and I couldn't find their videos talking about this game, but yeah, I'm just curious to go back and re-listen to those videos, because just to see what other people think about the story. So if you guys have played this game, share your comments about the story, about the gameplay. But overall, Spec Ops: The Line, a solid third-person shooter with a great story, but nothing that will, in my opinion, blow your mind, or my mind at least. I think most people out there have enjoyed this game more than I did, but nevertheless, it was a good game. So thank you guys for watching this video, and I will see you all later.